Facebook. It is time. It's almost 1 o'clock. I have a couple of minutes before Evan's fans and friends get on here. So let me say that Comic Spot is where this Army veteran, oh yeah, no, my mother didn't wear the Army boots, I did. This Army veteran veterans of comedy. And today you have somebody here who has been a globetrotter with his comedy. We have Evan Fonfa in the house. Let me read you the words he gave me to say, because I don't steal people's words and say they're my own. So I'm going to quote him. He says, he gave me a very beautiful, well done professional bio, too long for 10 minutes. So read it on the last post I put out. It's amazing what all he's done. We'll chop it up about that in a second. But in a nutshell, this is what the Evan Fonfa here told me to say about him. He said, just mention I perform stand-up frequently on the Las Vegas Strip, you guys, okay? And I stream live on Twitch every weekday at 5 p.m. Pacific. And we're going to find out all about that and more from someone who I find very entertaining, very funny, and very nice to people my age. Yeah, give it up for Vegas's own now, Evan Fonfa. Hi, Evan.
Hi, thank you. Good to be here.
I'm so glad you're here. Thanks for accepting the invite.
Of course.
So I went to Hilarious 7 at the Notoriety Club that John Hilder puts on. And you were up there towards the end of the show, killing it, as you do. Smart comedy and hilarious. Always a great stage persona and presence. And you captivate audiences every time I see you. I've seen you at mics. I've seen you at shows. What's your superpower? How do you do what you do?
Well, that's so nice of you to say. Thank you. It's hard to say. I wouldn't call it a superpower. I just try to be myself on stage. That's before I started, and all the everything I've learned. Everyone always says to just be yourself, and so I just really try hard to do that because it's not easy on stage. You know, you try to overact and make things concise to get it into a stand-up set, but I just really try to make it short but relatable to me and really who I am on stage. And people say that a lot, that it feels like I'm talking to their friend or something in the crowd. So it's good.
You do have that. I'm glad you're getting the feedback from other people. And you make me feel like you're peeling off layers of your life, and you're doing it in a very artful way.
That's so nice of you to say. Thank you.
Yeah. So you started out, you moved here from where?
I'm actually born here. I'm born and raised here. And I went to school in California, in Santa Cruz, California, for 4 years. But other than that, I've lived here my whole life. So I moved back here in 2016 after school.
Where were you doing the hip hop?
That was in Santa Cruz. So I worked for the radio station in college. I was a hip hop director, and I had a radio show, weekly show. That was kind of the beginning of entertainment for me, I guess. It was called the Fonzi Scheme, and so I did that for a couple years. And then when I moved home, I was like, I still need something. And so I started getting on stage and doing stand-up, and I've been doing it ever since.
Okay. So you went from being a hip hop director at a radio station, and then you said, okay, comedy, that just happened? Or did funny come out of being in the hip hop world, or how did you go there?
Well, I've always loved comedy. I've always loved stand-up. Grew up, with watching Chappelle and Chris Rock and George Carlin, watching those specials. And also a lot of comedy movies had a lot of influence on me, like Ben Stiller and Adam Sandler and stuff like that. So I've always loved comedy, always been kind of funny for friends and things like that. And I always kind of knew I wanted to do stand-up. I said a couple of times in college, like, oh, I'm going to try stand-up at an open mic. And I just never really got the balls to do it. And so I was funny on my show. I'd have fun, doing bits or anything, but I just would kind of mess around with friends or the guests I'd have. And it was funny. So when I got back from college, I was listening to a lot of podcasts, and I just kind of was like, I think I want to do stand-up. And really, I think it was like listening to Mark Maron's podcast, WTF. He interviews a lot of comedians and just hearing their stories. Cause I'd always kind of tell myself like, oh, I don't know if I can do stand up because I'm like, just this kid from the suburbs. Like I'm not that interesting. But then hearing these other people's stories and being like, I relate to this person saying this, or I relate to this person saying this. And I was like, I could probably still do it. And so that's kind of what inspired me to like actually get on stage.
And a little bit, if you don't mind me going there, I'm part
Sure.
Jewish. A little bit in your set, you touch on your Jewish roots,
Mm-hmm.
and you do it as just like you're just passing through mentioning it, and
Mm-hmm.
it works so well for your character, you
Thank
know.
you.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's crowds where you've been when you say that you've felt sphincters tighten up. It's the most popular topic still. And so, did you used to say a lot more about? I've got 10 minutes of material about being half Jewish, the wrong
Mm-hmm.
half, you know, and little by little, I just hardly ever mention it at all unless I feel the crowd is, just right for it.
Yeah,
What about?
well, I'm not that religious. I do identify with like, my Jewish heritage. My parents are Jewish. I was bar mitzvah, but I don't like go to temple really anymore. So it's not so much about of who I am. I mention it almost in the way my parents, like my parents are Jewish, and they, and so I also don't want to make like too many kind of jokes like that where I'm like, oh, I'm Jewish, so this, or play down the religion, because like you said, some people might look badly on it, and I don't really like to be make it go negative necessarily. So I mention it because it is part of who I am, but I don't make it about my set. I just make my set about me. Sometimes it mentions I'm Jewish, or sometimes it doesn't. I just don't really want to go off and do something, maybe something hack about Jews that's been done before. So if I think of something original that's about Judaism that I can do on stage, I'll do it. I just don't have a ton of material about it yet.
It's a tough topic. It's like pushing a
Mhm.
rope up a hill.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love the way you slide it in there and just keep on moving. It's part of who you are. You're not ashamed of it,
Hmm.
and you're not saying that you're, like super religious. You just say it, and I love the way. That's what one of the big takeaways I get every time I listen to you. You do
Thank you.
mention it. You
Hmm.
don't hide it, and
Yeah.
I appreciate the way you do that.
Great. Yeah.
So,
Thank you.
who are some people in comedy who have given you spots or helped you tweak your material to get it to where it is today, Evan?
So yeah, I've only ever been in Vegas, so there's a ton of comics in Vegas who give me a bunch of opportunities. I mean, you mentioned the Hilarious Seven. John Hilder's been great to me. I was lucky enough, probably like 2 months into stand up, I was in a contest that he was also in, and so then like 6 months later, he got the Hilarious Seven, and he had seen me in that contest and thought I was decent enough to do the show. So I got really lucky, kind of getting on the ground floor with Hilarious Seven. So it's been great doing that, and he's always been super cool to me. Jocelyn Sharp in Las Vegas. She's also been great. Where same thing, I did a different contest that I was in with her. I think she either won or got second place in the contest, and then I actually made it to the final round. That was early in stand up, and so she always just showed respect to me, because I feel like since I was new, a lot of times comics can kind of be gatekeepers or not, hold stuff against newer comics, and I
Yep.
noticed it more amongst people who maybe started like a year or two, not anymore, but when I first started, I felt like the people who were like a year or two ahead of me are like, oh, who's this new guy? But once you're someone like Jocelyn who's been doing it for a decade, you don't care. Everybody's new. If anybody's doing less time than you is new. So she's just like, oh, I like this kid. He's funny. He's respectful. Let's have him on. So I was on her Filth Factory show, and she's done my show a couple times, and so she's been great to me. Brandon Hahn, Gooch, has given me a bunch of advice hanging out at the comedy club. Jason Harris, honestly, has given me a couple tags here and there. He's been super nice to me. One of the first time I ever went to LA Comedy Club at the Strat, he was featuring and he introduced me to the headliner. Was nice to me. So, and that's just a few off the top of my head. I'm probably forgetting people, and
It's
a bunch of people
okay.
who I came up with, in the open mic scene when I first started, were around, started around the same time as me. Have just been super great and supportive, and I honestly love Vegas. I'm super glad I started
Me
out here. I feel
too.
like it's a great supportive scene. So,
It
yeah.
is. A lot of my material is from my life, and I'm 69 years old. And in
Mhm.
Portland, the same stuff I did there got 1/8 of the response it gets here.
Wow.
And I'm really glad I came here because people are just welcoming me with open arms.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
and there's every scene has its drama, and I'm really good at dodging drama. I
Same
don't
here.
want you take your drama. It's called your drama because it's your drama.
Yeah, I'll if it's happening publicly, I'll watch and maybe laugh, but I'm not going to take part in any of that.
Yeah, me neither. And if my name gets mentioned, I'm like, okay, you might want to stop doing that.
Yeah, yeah,
Or Google what libel and slander is.
definitely, exactly.
So, anyway, you got up and did comedy. And so, in your time, you said you've done clubs in Europe. Am I
I did
right?
one show. I did one show in Paris. I was just on vacation, and I was like, "Oh, there's a show happening in Paris, an English speaking show." I'm blanking. It was called French Fried Comedy, and there's like this comedy club there that has like they do a bunch of shows. Almost every show is in French, and then they have one show a week that's in English. And I got super lucky, and it was actually a great show. It was Jenny Zagrino. I don't know if you know her. She's like a headliner. She's like based in LA and a couple other big names. It was actually a great show, and I was like I got to just do a little guest spot on there. But it's just nice to put on my resume that I have performed in Paris. So
Totally.
yeah,
What's a very, I try to keep these to 10 minutes because by the time I sign on and off, it's 20, but got
sure.
a couple minutes left here.
Uh-huh.
I'd love to know what a very hard lesson that you learned in comedy that you won't repeat again, and your best experience in comedy so far. Could you do that for me in closing?
Sure. Yeah. So I guess the first thing that came to my mind when you said like the lesson I've learned is that it's just gonna be it's a long road and there's so many ups and downs. And so one day, you'll have a good set and you're like, oh, this is it. This is my future. Everything's gonna be good. And then the next day you might have a bad set and feel like, this is never gonna happen. I'm never gonna get in at the club. I'm never gonna get booked to do this or that. So it's just important to try to keep a level head and kind of like understand that you're gonna feel good and bad at different times, and it's just a long road, and you kind of just have to keep your wits about you, keep it together, and
That's
then
good advice.
thank you, yeah, and then my best moment, you said,
Mhm.
probably I got to perform. It was just a little show in the Belly Room, but I got to perform at the Comedy Store. I've actually performed there twice, and the most recent time I performed there, it was just a really good, fun set. I had some weird stuff happen in the crowd, so I got to kind of riff off that. And it was just a great vibe, great crowd. And I don't know, just getting to perform on that stage, it's amazing comedians over the decades. And, since that club's open, all the greatest comedians of all time have performed on that stage. So it
What
just
a
is like
great big
cosmic.
deal for you.
Yeah.
So I want to hear about the funny stuff that happened in the crowd.
There was just a drunk guy there, and it was literally I couldn't really hear. He was like arguing with his friend, and it was just in the middle of me explaining kind of a funny story anyway. So I was like, what? And I kind of just riffed off the story, and it ended up getting some good laughs. And it was actually that show. It was headlined by Adam Ray, who's hilarious, and he's pretty well known. And the guy, I guess, had done an acting class with Adam Ray probably like 10 years before, this drunk guy. And so he was kind of heckling him like, hey, man, remember me from the acting class? And he was like, I honestly don't, but like, and he kind of riffed off it for a second and they kicked him out. But it was just kind of, there's always weird people and funny people that happen in the crowd. So it was just, yeah, it was interesting.
Do you have any one last I'm worse than Barbara Walters on crack. My mother always said you can ask more questions. But one last question. I promise
Sure.
this is the last one.
No worries.
What is the worst thing you've ever observed ever? That you don't have to name club or people, but what was something that was like, oh my God, it's about to go down? I've got one.
Yeah. I guess the first thing I thought of, I don't know if it's the worst, but I was at a club one time and the headliner, he was wrapping up his set. He had done probably, 40 minutes or whatever, and he was working towards the end. And I guess I was on the opposite side of the room. And so I think I'm sure this woman had been talking a lot and it was annoying her. And I mean, that happens and it's annoying when people talk, but this headliner just blew up on her and was like, hey, you need to shut up. And the friends were like, what? She was barely even talking. And he's like, nah, get this bitch out of here. And he started freaking out. And it was this whole thing. And it's still a learning experience because he is a talented headliner, and he probably doesn't even remember because things happen, whatever. But to me, it's like you just got to keep your cool. I'm sure people, you hear things in the crowd, and people frustrate you, and when you get mad, it becomes weird, So if he had just kind of joked about it and said, "Hey, this girl's annoying, you should probably kick her out" or something like that, rather than he got pissed, and it was like weird for a good like 5-10 minutes, and like other people in the crowd like walked out too after he did that. It was like a huge scene that didn't need to happen. So yeah,
Yes.
that just stuck out to me, but I'm sure there's been other things too.
Want to hear mine in Philadelphia?
Yeah.
So I'm at Punchline Philly watching the mic. You put your name in, my name didn't get picked. So I'm being supportive. I'm not bitter. I'm just being supportive. And I'm sitting there watching people, wishing I could go up. And I had talked to this girl at the next table who is a comic. She went to the bathroom. She comes back and says, "Oh my God, there was this lady in the bathroom telling me about her hemorrhoids." And I was laughing, because it's kind of funny. She goes up on stage. They call her next. She says the whole story of what transpired in the bathroom with the lady with the pink purse who has hemorrhoids and didn't wash her hands when she left the bathroom. Leaves the stage, gets a lot of laughs from the story. The next person they call up is the lady with the pink purse and hemorrhoids. And it was about to go ghetto fabulous. This lady was so pissed that she'd been outed. She had a big table of friends there, and they all knew she was now the one with hemorrhoids.
Oh my God.
I thought I was gonna die that night.
That's
in more
so
ways
funny.
than one.
Yeah, I have one more if you want to hear. If you have time.
Yes.
I did the at LA Comedy Club. I mentioned in my bio, I won the Midnight Spotlight there, which is like a locals, new comics contest.
Wow.
And that night the way they set it up is they have like 7 newer comics, and then they had like 3 guest spots, which were really like headliners doing guest spots. And so Rocky Dale Davis, and he tells this story. He talks about it. He did a guest spot. And
I love Rocky Dale Davis.
He's another guy I should have mentioned. Actually, he's been so great to me, a friend to me, and I'm grateful for his friendship. He's been awesome to me. So I should have mentioned him when you asked me people who've helped me out. Yeah, so he was doing a guest spot, and we're in this contest. This is our opportunity to get on stage at LA Comedy Club. We'd never been there, a real club, and I guess some guy in the front row was talking, and he had noticed he'd been talking the whole time. This is another scenario, but Rocky, in a better way, but it still got a little tense. He made fun of the guy in the front row for talking and was like, "Hey, you need to shut up. These guys, these people, these other comedians are trying to do their first time ever on stage. This is a big opportunity for them. Let them go and shut up." And the guy, I think in Rock, he's kind of a tough guy, big guy. I'm sure he thought the guy was going to shut up and just say, okay. But the guy in the crowd just didn't back down really and was like, well, what the fuck are you going to do about it, kind of thing. And it almost seemed like it was going to go down on stage. And then I guess he ended up getting some laughs to get off stage, but it was still a little tense after his set. By the time I went up there, it was 3 or 4 people later, so it was fine. But I guess that guy did follow Rocky to the parking lot and like sucker punched him. And he tells this story. It's kind of a funny
That's one. The night that he talks about. I've heard him speak of it. Oh my gosh.
Definitely. Yeah.
So did you win that contest that night?
I did. I got, I had, it was like a crowd cheering thing. And because I'm from here, I had a good cheering section. But I mean, it was honestly, everybody had great sets that night. And it was all comics that I'm still friends with and we still keep in touch. And a lot of them ended up getting opportunities at the club anyway, because that's just, how it works. As long as you get seen by the booker, it doesn't matter if you win. But yeah, so it was a great night.
I got to go up at LA Comedy Club right before everything shut down on Jimmy Earl's show.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
And Jimmy said great. I killed.
Awesome. Yeah.
I would never say that about my comedy, but he said it.
Yeah. I'm always like, if people say that, I'm like, thank you. I just don't want to sound like cocky or anything like that. Like, I'll be like, yeah, I did good. That's probably the best you'll hear from me.
It's the best I could do right at this point. Tomorrow might be different.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a wave. Ride it, folks.
Yeah.
You've been so awesome to come on here and share your life in a short period of time, Evan. And now that you're a graduate of the Comic Spot interview, anytime the world opens up and you want to come back and plug anything, you may do so. Just let me know you need 5 minutes to come plug. And by the way, speaking of plug, I posted your entire long intro, your long bio.
Thank you.
And is there any specific place where you want to have me highlight up at the top where to follow you to get traction?
I would just push, Twitch, which you linked. I saw my Twitch. It's twitch.tv/Evan Fonzi. Also my YouTube. I'm putting up clips up there. It's just, if you search Evan Fonzi or Evan Fonfa on YouTube, it'll come up. Those are kind of my main things I'm pushing, but I'm on Twitter and Instagram, which follow me there too for, funny stuff or whatever. So, I'm on social media, but I'd say Twitch and YouTube are the main things I'm kind of pushing right now.
Twitter and Instagram, you're on as
Evan Fonzi.
Sorry, it froze up there.
Okay. Oh, no worries. It's Evan Fonzi, Fonzie.
And what made you go with Fonzie?
It was just, Fonfa is similar to Fonzie, and I used to play video games, back in high school. And I still play video games, but when you'd have like an online name, and my name at first it was just Fon Fizzle, which is like Fonfa, but I threw the fizzle on the end. And then people just started calling me Fonzie, and it just kind of stuck from there. And then my friends in real life started calling me Fonzie. And then when I had the radio show, I actually have a friend, Grant, who recommended I should make the name the Fonzi Scheme, like Ponzi scheme, but it's like a little pun.
I like that too.
Thank you. Yeah. So I've stuck with the Fonzi Scheme. Has kind of been my, I name my comedy shows that. That's what I call my, my YouTube channel and all that stuff. I'm just calling it Fonzi Scheme. It's just kind of my brand, I guess.
I love it.
Thank you.
I love it. I love your comedy and I love you. And thanks for coming on, and come back and plug anything when the world opens up.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Oh, I'm delighted. I'm delighted. You're a great guy. See you later, Evan Fonfa, you guys. Evan G. Fonfa. And I'll put all his links back up there.
Great. Great talking to you. Thank you.
Great talking to you. Bye.
Bye.
Everybody's